Come on. It's another day and it's another Bywire on the Bywire just for you. And oh my days, have we got a show for you. Handpicked guests from different parts of the media here to tell you what is going on to change, break down, and rebuild the landscape into a truly free landscape. Now, before I introduce our guests, though, let's dive into what our independent partners have been reporting on today. First up, over to the Canary, a regular on the show, and today they've been covering the big NHS data grab. It's not another article about the data grab, but it's an article that goes deeper into it. A video from 2018 has appeared online and shared by Carol. I get this name wrong, so I'm just going to say it, and if I get it wrong, my apologies. Cadwallard on Twitter, where we see Dido Harding getting very excited, talking to Alexander Nix, the former CEO of Cambridge Analytica. You remember them ones? Brexit, data, games on WhatsApp. I've got games on Facebook and that. Yeah, you know where I'm at. Anyway, they're talking about basically data exploitation. That's what it is. And at the time of the recording, it's believed that Dido was chair of NHS Improvement. Now, I'm sure that was just a made-up role so that Dido could get some money or something, but I'm sure Dido also had some influence with that role. Now, just see where this is going. Data exploitation, chair of NHS Improvement, Cambridge Analytica. We're about to have to go through this process of telling the NHS whether we do or don't want our data to be shared with people who we probably don't want it to be shared with. Yeah. Now, it's important to note that the British Medical Association and the Royal College of GPs have not endorsed this data project, and there are legal proceedings underway against the projects. The Canary, as always, go deep into this story and definitely give you more information than you'd get on the 6 o'clock news. Now, if you've tuned in tonight, I'm sure you're expecting to hear a bit about the Daniel Morgan report, and it is coming. Don't worry. I promise you, we're going to cover that. But because you know I've got the source, and I'm not like Bossman charging you 25p for extra sauce, I highly recommend heading over to Byline Times, where those clever chickens have managed to secure an interview with David Cook. Who's David Cook? He is the only Fed that the family of Daniel Morgan trusted. Now, if you don't know anything about Daniel Morgan, they're not likely to trust the Feds. Like, they're not their friends. Like, no popo, come around here, you get me? Anyway, I don't want to spoil the source for you, but just head over to Byline Times site and check out that exclusive interview by James Dolman, where you learn a little bit more about the intricacy of exactly what's going on in this case that we're looking into today. Now, over at Open Democracy, those cheeky chappies and chapettes have had a good week last week, and Parliament is adding to the whipped cream to their sweet stuff. You see where I'm going with the food vibes today? Yeah, I'm hungry. Anyway, a Westminster committee will be launching an inquiry into the secretive clearing house. You remember that one last week? It's where the government were basically covering up any of their BS on any of their documents that were to go out in freedom of information requests. Now, I'd love to see this being the end of Michael Gove. Big up Peter. I get another name that I'm apologizing in advance if I absolutely trash it, but Peter Gyogan for covering this story. And make sure you have a good read of this one, because like, there's a lot, again, Byline Time, Open Democracy are just pulling out the bits, letting you know the information, letting you know exactly what's going on. And this committee, this could mean a lot for government secrecy. Now, talking about government secrecy, Declassified are taking on the devil reincarnated herself, Priti Patel. Don't let that lovely smile fool you. You may not know about this, right? But the government are reforming the Official Secrets Act. There's an Official Secrets Act, bruv. Like, I'm telling you, come on. It's mad. Which, now, this will have a massive implications. The implications, you see, always Sunny fans will get it. Anyway, it will have implications on the media and the public's right to know. The government, under Patel's instruction, are looking to make it easier for them to keep secrets from us. Go figure that this government have got secrets and more secrets they want to keep from us. Now, they're also trying to make it easier for them to jail people for longer if they happen to stumble on these secrets and release them, even if it's in the public's interest to know about these secrets. Like, There has to be a level, right? Like, I get it. Some things, public safety. Patel used that today, public safety. But, where's the line around public safety? And don't tell them that, because, it might make us look bad. That's literally where we're at. Anyway, it's just messed up, man. Make sure you do check out Declassified, currently being hosted on the Daily Maverick website, for their article on this. And also make sure you share it on social media as well, because it's not a secret yet. You got to let people know what the government are up to. And big up Richard Norton Taylor for that one. Finally, over at the Bristol Cable, Matty Edwards has revealed that local services are being slammed for serious failings of people with autism and learning difficulties. The institutional failings, attitudes, and structures in place have been proven inadequate, and there has been an urgent call for change immediately through a series of steps, including raising awareness of these issues. Now, as always, over at the Cable, they've done a very in-depth piece with big questions being asked about how this has happened, why it's happened, and also how it can be stopped. So please do make sure to check out our independent partners. And you know where to find the latest in independent media. It's on bywire.news. Obviously, I've got to do the usual little holler at your boy on the subscribe button, the like button, the share button, the follow button. You know what it is. We're on all the socials. We're just everywhere. And we can be even more places if you guys hit the share button. And while you're on the bywire.news website, make sure, if you can, you hit that donate button as well. Because, as I say every night, the media is currently owned by a very few people with a lot of money, and they don't pay a lot of taxes. And this has got to change. The media needs to be owned by the people. It needs to be produced by the people. And it needs to be definitely in the interest of the people and for the people. And that's what we do at Bywire. We're trying to provide a wide range of independent media that you can own. You can literally own a part of it. So hit that donate button if you can. And if you can't, hit share, hit like. You know what it is. Don't forget to check us out on the socials. Now, today's show, we've got a couple of cool cats coming on. First of all, I like to call him my brother. Some people call him uncle, but he is, I would say, Twitter's unheard comedian, because he has some of the best little jokes and little smart comments about what's going on in the politics of, well, the politics of the world, but also the politics that gets spoken about on Twitter. It is Dev Ravel, also known as Dev Utopia. Make sure you check out the Twitter handle. Dev, how are you doing? How's life? How are you feeling in this beautiful weather?
Hot, very hot, but apart from that, very good. Yeah, good to see you.
Fantastic. Good to see you, my man, especially to see your actual face and not your little Twitter logo. But thanks for coming on. Now, today, obviously, that I think our viewers know our views on where the media's at, what's going on. But you've been doing a lot of work, and you do a lot of information pieces. I know you've put some of it on Instagram as well, about how we build a better left media, or even how we build a left media, but also, you know, how to challenge or take on some of the narratives that are creating our own narratives. Very similar, but I like you've got a different way about going things, about like what James Schneider was talking about early on in our series. And do you know what? I'll just basically start from the basics. What are you doing? What are you trying to get across, and what are your thoughts on it all?
Okay, thanks, Dan. The main reason I focus on the media, and have done, so I do other things too. During time Jeremy was Labour leader, I spent a lot of time campaigning for him and for Labour. But all through that, before and now, the media is a major focus for me. And the reason for that is, I'm a socialist. I'm on the left of the Labour Party. And that's quite different to, I think, any other political grouping. We want different. We just don't want tweaks here and there. We don't want better. We want things to be fundamentally different. The biggest block to that isn't the Tory party. It's not even the right of the Labour Party. The biggest block to that is mainstream media. You won't get a progressive government, a radical government in this country with the mainstream media the way it is. It's the big obstacle. And if by chance somehow a radical government did get elected, that media will then destroy it. And there's a lot of people saying, if Jeremy had won, X, Y, and Z would have happened. And it will be great. It may or may not have been, but one thing I guarantee you, that first morning, however bad you thought the media was the previous 5 years, that first morning, you would not believe what would have happened. Leaks, they'd have made stuff, they'd have just gone for him, right? So every political grouping, you know, the right, the centre, everyone talks about the media or they have a bias. For us, it's the biggest obstacle we have. So we have to think about what we do and how we tackle it. And that's my focus on the bias of the mainstream media, but also us. You know, I use the hashtag build our own media because that's literally the case. We have to build our own media.
I love that that build our own media, because obviously, you know, I always say here to people on the Bywire, you know, own the media. Now, owning the media is one thing, you know, putting your money into it, but you know, practically, what does that look like? Building our own media? Are we going out and buying blocks to build our own £500,000 a year centre in the middle of Mayfair, or are you talking something different?
Well, I'd say the basic thing is, sorry, excuse me. I used Twitter as the example. Twitter is where a lot of politics happens. It's where the political chat happens, basically. What you see on your timeline on Twitter, that's you, right? That's what you have built individually, what you see on your timeline. What we all see collectively, that's what we collectively build. So, you know, one thing about Twitter, which if you're on Twitter, you will know this, you don't need me to quantify it. Not everybody interacts. Right. So, for instance, I follow over 4,700 people. Every day, I do not see 4,700 different comments. The majority of people on social media, be it Twitter and Facebook too, are passive. The Pew Research Center in the US, they do loads of surveys. They did one on Twitter in 2018. They looked at it, and the average adult on Twitter in the US, how many times do they tweet? On average, 2 times a month. Right?
Wow.
That's the average. So you got to think the other side of the average is 1 and 0. And that's that survey. But if you're on Twitter for any length of time, you know that's true, right? I follow 4,700 people. I don't see 4,700 views.
Yeah, yeah.
What we see on Twitter is a reflection of all of us. So even that person who never tweets, right? A lot of people don't for good reasons, right? They're worried about repercussions, either their family, their job, or abuse. So a lot of people, as I say, the vast majority are passive. Even if you're passive, you are building that media, right? So, for example, right? So Dan, tonight, right? I follow you on Twitter, for example, right? Tonight, you see a ridiculously offensive, racist comment on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
You like it, and I think that's a big misnomer. There's a function on Twitter called like. Basically, to me, that's file. That's you saying, I'm going to do something with this later on. Right? I like loads of things I agree with, things I don't agree with, sorry. I'm keeping the receipts, basically. Right?
Yeah.
So you may like that racist offensive tweet, not because you like it, you're storing it for action later on, because you're so offended, you want to do something, you want to complain. The moment you click like, because I follow you, that showed up on my timeline.
Yeah.
You built my media for me. Unconsciously, unknowingly, I am now seeing that racist tweet.
Yeah, yeah.
If I then agree, and I think, oh gosh, wow, that's really racist, I retweet it out with a comment like, oh wow, gosh, this is offensive.
Yeah.
Everybody who follows me, and there's about 24,000 or two, do get a chance to see that tweet.
Yeah.
This tweet by some nutter who's got 2 followers, one of them who's his cat, right, suddenly gets seen by loads of people. Why? Because you'd like that tweet for your own purpose. You didn't know about me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
saw it. I reacted. I boosted it to an audience. People in that audience boosted it to more. And there you go. This nutter somewhere becomes a minor personality.
Yeah.
He becomes a victim, right? We make that choice. So, you know,
sorry, Dev.
Yeah.
I don't know where your microphone is, but could you just check your connection? As there's a little bit of interference. I can only hear it slightly, but someone's just messaged saying that it's quite bad. So if you could just double check that, and then
how about this? Can you hear me better?
Just yeah, it sounds better to me. And then if you could just carry on, you know, like what are those practical steps that we need to take in regards to building our own media?
So one thing is just conscious choice, right? When you like something, understand that's going to pop up on the timelines of everyone you follow. We're in a fortunate position. Now, you think about 5-6 years ago, before Jeremy ran for leader, what was left social media? Now we've got a number of outlets that do news.
I'm really sorry, Dev. It's gotten to the point. It's gone really unclear when you're speaking.
Okay.
Let's just have a look here. Go again for us.
Okay. Hi, is that better?
No, it just seems to be slightly interfered. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you off for a moment, and
Okay.
we're just going to pop over to. We're going to carry on the show with our next guest, and then what I'm going to try and do is at the end I'll try and bring you back
Yeah,
in
okay,
if that's
yeah.
all right, and just see if maybe if you want to log out and log back in.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll go over to our next guest. Thanks so much, Dev,
Okay.
and definitely want to continue that conversation. Really unfortunate there, but that is what happens when you're doing live broadcasts and on the internet. But you know, keeping things moving, we've got Nathan Sparks from the Hacked Off campaign here to talk to us about what's been going on with the Daniel Morgan report, which has been, in fairness, across the media today, we have seen a lot about it. And one of the things I would say is that a lot of the time you don't get an explanation on what the history is, what's happened, and why it's important to us. You watch the 6 o'clock news, 10 o'clock news, whatever it might be, pick up whichever newspaper, and it doesn't give you the background. It doesn't tell you the importance of exactly what's happened and how it's relevant to your life right now. So I'm really grateful to Nathan for coming on to the show this evening to give us a bit of that explanation and help people get a better understanding, really, of exactly that. Nathan, I'm guessing you've had a very busy day speaking to a lot of people, watching a lot of Priti Patel and other politicians give their 2 pence on it. So here's your opportunity to give us your, rather than 2 pence, give us your 20 million on it. Tell us exactly, you know, Daniel Morgan, first of all, just as a start, who is Daniel Morgan and why are people so interested in the report today?
Yeah, so it's an incredibly complex case. I mean, the report today is over 1,200 pages, and there's more they could have said. And I think they said they reviewed more than 1 million documents for it. So it is incredibly complex, and it's difficult to distill. But just to give the kind of the briefest summary, Daniel Morgan was a private investigator who was murdered quite brutally in 1987. There have been 5 police investigations into Daniel's murder, and they've all failed. They've all collapsed. And that the central reason for that is corruption in the police force. The initial case, even the Met Police has admitted for several years, was mired in corruption. And the report today is very clear that successive cases have been affected by corruption as well. What was very interesting in respect of kind of the police corruption at the heart of this case that the report covered today is that it's been institutional and it's manifested in ways that we don't maybe necessarily think of corruption. So it's not just about explicit corrupt acts, direct acts of corruption, but it's also about a lack of transparency, a lack of forthcomingness with evidence, and so on. So just to kind of give a bit more background on who Daniel Morgan was and who kind of the key people in this case are. He was working for a private investigations firm called Southern Investigations in 1987 when he was killed. It is believed, although this is unproven, it is believed that he was close to exposing corruption in the Metropolitan Police Force before he was killed. And what's kind of emerged at the heart of this story through those failed police investigations is a kind of a network of reporters working for the News of the World newspaper, one of the News UK Murdoch newspapers, and corrupt police officers and individuals working for these private investigations firms like Southern Investigations. And Southern Investigations was used by several newspapers throughout the noughties and possibly the 90s to unlawfully access people's personal data, and they passed it on to newspapers. And often they were the intermediaries between the corrupt police officers who were exchanging information to the press. either directly for publication or for use to generate other stories. So there's what you get is this very sort of dangerous kind of network of corrupt characters, police officers, news of the world journalists, and private investigators, and together they have that network has obstructed justice for the last 30 years. And there's been a lot of talk today, and quite rightly so, about failings in the Metropolitan Police Force, particularly over the last few years. Even throughout the panel's investigations, they say they met an awful lot of obstruction and resistance from the Met to accessing the documents they needed to see. And it's absolutely right that the spotlight has been on the Met in that respect. But one thing that's been a little bit overlooked, I think, in some of the media coverage today, is that the report was also very clear that News of the World journalists did act well. They believe there is strong evidence that News of the World journalists acted to interfere and discredit, in particular, one of those police investigations into Daniel's murder. And that's a really kind of extraordinary finding, that a national newspaper publisher, an independent panel believes, employees of that newspaper deliberately sought to obstruct a murder investigation. And there's another kind of strain to all of this, is that Daniel's family, on top of the independent panel which we've had today, were also promised that the second part of the Levison inquiry would investigate specifically the relationships between the police and the press, which allowed this cover-up to happen for so long, in detail. Now, that inquiry was promised back in 2011, but the Conservative government reneged on its promises just a couple of years ago in 2018 and cancelled it. And so we've part of the government's position at the time was that there's nothing to see here. This has been appropriately investigated. Well, we now have an independent panel reiterating what has been believed for a long time, which is that there is strong evidence that employees of a Murdoch newspaper interfered in these investigations. And still the government is persisting with not announcing a public inquiry into that, alongside many other cases of police and press corruption that Levison Part 2 would look into. And I think it's very interesting just that we have a government at the moment that talks a big game on law and order, and yet when it comes to very well substantiated allegations of criminal interference in a murder investigation, when it's newspaper reporters that are the people who are believed to have been involved, that this government takes a very different line and appears to be quite happy for potentially guilty parties to walk free.
It's interesting because, like, you speak to like a lot of a lot of black and brown people across the UK, especially in working class communities, and we can tell you the police are corrupt. You know what I mean? Like, we know they're corrupt. They're messing with our communities all the time. But I suppose it comes to a point where when you've got a really big case like this, where it's been investigated, and please accept it how I say it, but when a white person has been affected in this way, a lot of the media wakes up and notices, and it is damning. Like, you know, I've read a lot of the information that's been available today. It is damning what's happened, the fact it's actually been able to be evidenced, because I could tell you the police are corrupt, like I said before, but I probably wouldn't be able to evidence it other than a couple of camera phone videos of a couple of feds saying something dodgy, you know what I mean? But like, there's evidence here showing exactly what's gone on. What I am interested, though, obviously for yourself with the Hacked Off campaign, and I suppose it's linked with the Levison inquiry, is where do you guys come into this, and what's the next steps really for yourself and the organization, but also for the family of Daniel?
Well, of course, that's absolutely right, and it's really important that the public are able to trust the police, and this is a case that goes right to the heart of that. And it's generally a very, I mean, Levison Part 2 is an example of an issue where, and the government consulted on continuing the Levison inquiry, and the majority of respondents were in favour of completing it. Those who were in opposition, almost isolated in their opposition, were largely newspaper publishers and the government. And we should all be really concerned when there are kind of, especially when there are, well, in general, we should be concerned when newspaper companies and the government, the guardians and our leaders are in agreement and nobody else is. That should always be concerning from a democratic perspective. But it should be particularly concerning when we're talking about things like police corruption, because that's, as you say, is something that affects everyone. But in terms of kind of the next steps for us, I think, you know, it's obviously been it's been really important that we've had for Daniel's family. I understand it's been really important that there's been this public acknowledgement of institutional corruption in the police force. I think kind of from our perspective, the next thing has to be re-establishing the second part of the Levison inquiry. What kind of a country is this? Is this a country in which private companies can interfere in murder investigations? People working for private companies, and there's no evidence of an internal investigation in that company to review exactly what went on, and we just turn a blind eye to it. I mean, that's kind of what Levison Part 2 is all about. And the other thing that I would just stress is that while this is a really important case, there are dozens of others, lots of other examples. For example, over the cover-up of the Hillsborough disaster, similarly, there is a lot of evidence of improper relationships between newspapers, police, and politicians involved in that cover-up. Orgreave, similarly, and there are many other cases as well. Levison Part 2 is the inquiry that would explore these properly and hopefully restore some trust in our public institutions. Yes, the police force, also politicians, hopefully as well.
And Levison Part 2, like, is it going to go ahead? Because I've been trying to keep up with Twitter today, and there's people saying that, you know, Pretty Patel doesn't believe that there is a need for Levison Part 2, but didn't mention the fact that it is Brian Levison, is it right? Is that right? The guy doing the actual inquiry actually disagrees with Patel and the government and believes that it should go ahead. So do you have any insight into whether that's going to go ahead, whether that's going to happen or not?
Oh, well, that's right. So Sir Brian Levison was in favour of completing it. The majority of public respondents to the government's own consultation were in favour of completing it, and free speech organisations like Article 19 were in favour, the NUJ were in favour. And in terms of the politics of it, over the last few years, nearly all opposition parties of note in the House of Commons have expressed support for it as well as a number of backbench Conservative MPs who disagree with their leadership and believe that people who have been responsible for criminal acts should be held to account. So the Conservative Party leadership is isolated on this issue. And they're, of course, in power at the moment, and they've got a very significant majority. So clearly that makes it very difficult for the position to be reversed right now. But the fact that there's only one sort of party, only really their leadership have this position, means that actually I think it's quite unlikely that opposition is likely to remain beyond future elections and future parliaments. Yeah,
no, I definitely see that point. Now, you mentioned before, obviously, there's like Hillsborough and other cases where Levison basically has a part to play, or Levison Part 2 has a part to play in what can happen in the future. And I think the key thing is really, you know, when we look at Hillsborough, for myself, I live in Liverpool, got family here, and it's, you know, every day there's a poster on a wall saying justice for the 96. And as you know, there's a publication that doesn't get spoke of in this beautiful land we call Merseyside. But the reason that so many people felt so much away that they took the actions they've taken in changing, you know, the whole city and region is because it affected everyone. Like where I live in Sefton, there's a large number of the people affected by Hillsborough were from here, and it's everyone's brother, everyone's sister, uncle. You know, everyone had a relative or a friend that was affected by that tragedy. And I always find it amazing because obviously the number in comparison to something like 9/11, you speak to a lot of people and they were affected by 9/11, but on a local basis, you see that comparison, everyone was affected by it. And that's the thing. It could be anyone, couldn't it? And when it comes to these kind of issues, would you say that that's the important point really in why Levison Part 2 is so important? And it is so important that we do have these inquiries and reports. But also the question for you is, what more can people be doing to really be pushing for these inquiries and the changes that we need, including obviously supporting the Hacked Off campaign? But are there other steps that people can take?
So yeah, I mean, Hillsborough is just a great example of a big cultural problem here, and the job of quality journalism and quality newspapers is to find out the truth and hold authorities to account, and to speak out for ordinary people where they've been affected by malpractice by authorities. So how on earth did the Sun newspaper come up with an account of what happened at Hillsborough that matched what the authorities, South Yorkshire Police, said happened, and not what hundreds and thousands of ordinary people who were actually there and experienced those appalling events, what they reported? How did that happen? Newspapers' job is to lift up the voices of those that were there, who are fighting institutional and authorities who are responsible for misconduct. How on earth was it the case that in the Hillsborough disaster, things were so entirely reversed, and also promoting an agenda which very much suited the government at the time? And we know there were relationships there as well. So there are politicians involved. But in answer to your specific question, it's very easy for politicians, MPs, to say that they will support Levison Part 2 if it comes to a vote in the future, which it may well do, that they will. And if you go to the Hacked Off website, you can write to your MP very quickly and easily just by filling in your postcode and say, will you support Levison Part 2? And there's no reasonable argument not for Levison Part 2 not to go ahead, in my view. It's the only arguments that are used by the government on this are that things have moved on, to which the answer is they haven't for Daniel's family. They haven't for hundreds and thousands of people who've been affected by police corruption. And also, how do you know that things have moved on? The point of Levison Part 2 was to find out if things had moved on in newspaper culture. So no one can say for sure that newspapers aren't still engaging in those kinds of activities. And the other reason they give is expense. And it cost about £5 million for the first Levison inquiry, which is relatively affordable. I mean, what price do we pay to sort of root out corruption? The Daniel Morgan report cost about £16 million. So it would likely come in a lot less than that. The government's just spent £2.5 million on a briefing room, which is very rarely used. I'm sure they can find the money to have an inquiry to get to the bottom of corruption between some of the most powerful institutions in the country.
Most definitely. I think there was, 64 million spent on the repairs of Big Ben or the Elizabeth Tower. There's 34 million on the repairs or just improvements to Buckingham Palace. The money's there. The money's there, isn't it? It's crazy. And then, like, for someone like me, that kind of money is just unimaginable. Like, the only time I could get close to that money is by hanging around Mayfair and hoping to whiff the perfume of a rich person. You know what I mean? But real talk, like, listen, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I will definitely be sharing the Hacked Off, the tool that people can use to write to their MPs. We definitely want to talk more about Levison too, and we'll make sure to keep covering, your articles and stuff. Really appreciate you giving us the time today. Thank you so much, and all the best with the next steps to the campaign. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Okay.
That's so interesting. You know what? A big thanks to Nathan. Big thanks to Hacked Off. They're great people. Now, we obviously had a little technical issue before, but the main man, the brother, my guy, Dev, is back on. We were in the middle of talking about what are the practical steps we take to build our own media. Thanks for coming back on. I really appreciate it, Dev. you were talking about, the impacts it has on, there's in America, most people tweet. I think you said it was like once every few days or something.
Yeah. Firstly, can you hear me okay, Dan?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I was checking your sound levels before. Good. So it seems like it's coming through fine.
That was just an example when I talked about liking tweets, that left media is very different to right-wing establishment media. Right. So there's a structure in the new world, whether it's politics, it's fashion, it's sport, whatever, there's a structure to media. At the top, you've got what I call organizational media, right? That's newspapers, TV channels, whatever, magazines. The big bit at the bottom is the consumers. And in the new world in social media, you've got a tiny level in the middle, something called influencers. Right? Most of social media now goes that way, right? You've had traditional media, influencers, that's an interesting group too, right? What you see in your timeline comes from a small group of people. Again, that same study by the Pew Center in the US, 80% of the tweets you see in your timeline come from 10% of Twitter users, right? Which stacks up to what I said before, right? I follow 4,700 people. I don't see 4,700 tweets a day, right? So influencers have a power, right? Yep. And you've seen that in all other kinds of media. In right-wing media establishment, that doesn't matter. The influencers are Rupert Murdoch, the media owners. They don't need their activist social media people to do stuff. Our world is different. We need all of us to be on an agenda. The more common it is, the better. Because we're trying to fight a big beast, a massive beast in establishment media. And I think for a lot of us, we don't understand some of those mechanics. So the example I gave before of liking a tweet that shows up on other people's tweets, the new mechanic of influencers, where, as I say, the bulk of your tweets, 80% of them come from 10% of Twitter users. That gives those users in left media a different power to the ones in the right. On right media, those influencers don't count. Establishment media drives it. On left media, those people have quite an influence on what we see, what we don't see, what we talk about. Some good cases, some injustice cases, the Orsini Brown case. A lot of that started by people on social media, pioneering that case, boosting it. So that's a good use of that power. There can be negative uses of power just simply by what we don't talk about. Right? So one of my bugbears with the left, we don't talk enough about climate change. That's not some accident. That's a choice loads of people have made not to talk about it as much and to talk about something else instead. That's different to establishment media where, if you think of some high street on your restaurant, you could fit in all the decision makers of establishment media into that, right? The owners of newspapers, their editors, head of BBC News, head of Sky News, you could fit in one restaurant.
Murdoch does it for his garden party every year.
Yeah. That is exactly right. Those are the people who shape the media. On the left, it's a disparate bunch of folks who kind of, a layer of that top 10% of Twitter users, they shape what we see. Right? So if they decide the most important thing isn't climate change, but it is, say, what's going on in the Labour Party today, that's what left Twitter media people who follow, left accounts, that's the bulk of what they see. So we're all making active choices now, whether you're someone with tens of thousands of Twitter followers or you're someone who just likes tweets, we all shape left media. And, we don't have time to do this here, but we all need to make really conscious choices about what we do, particularly those who have that sort of influencer power. You're shaping what thousands of people see. We need to just be smarter about that, because I think we're at a real junction point here of where we go. I think left media, all of it, the organizational bit, individual activists, we've got a choice of which way we go. Where's our energy? Is our energy on us, issues that matter to us, e.g. what's going on in the Labour Party, what's happening with Starmer? Is that where we want to go? Or do we need to talk about stuff outside of our world? What's going on with this government? What's happening with Corona? What about the evictions? What about all these things? Where's our energy go? What that isn't some accident, it's our choice. What establishment news is, that's the choice of a handful of folks. Right now, as we're speaking at this time, there's a bunch of folks in editorial offices deciding tomorrow's headlines. Those headlines will shape BBC News, Sky News. we need to try and be as smart in recognising our power. That's a whole complicated thing, how we do that, all the rest of it. The first step is recognising that. All of us shape our timeline. We all build our own media. We all need to think about how we do that better. And there's a chunk of detail behind that. But we need to start engaging that conversation. And all of us, each of us, we need to ask, what is it I do better? Different people have different power, different influence, sure. So some people might need to do more than others. But we all need to be having that conversation and think about what we do. We've got a real decision point about where we go. And we need to get into that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And like I like what you're saying there. Obviously, you're pointing out around the impact the influencers have in comparison to the media people. I remember when I've done some work on some commercial stations before, it's around 4 or 5 a.m. you get sent an email while you're on the way into the office to make a decision on what we're going to talk about today. And sometimes, like, obviously there's a main batch of, say, 10 or 15 stories that have been chosen by some people above you. But then it's myself at the time starting off as a coffee runner and then becoming a part of the team. People like myself who actually get an opportunity to have an influence and say on what goes on those stories. But what you're talking about here is like literally, the people who are on Twitter or on any social media, because obviously there's a lot of different platforms where we have different demographics of people. There's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's Clapper, Clubhouse. There's so many platforms, as well as Twitter and Facebook. But it is those people who are on those platforms that have the opportunity to be able to influence what people are talking about. Now, for the everyday user of Twitter, the person who is liking tweets or TikTok, just liking stuff and everything, how do they have an impact? What can they do to help shape the future of not just social media but media? What are the steps they can be taking? Because that's the thing I love about this show, is like I try and give people a takeaway. Obviously I'd love to give everyone some spicy wings tonight and have a good time. France are 2-0 now, by the way, but what's the takeaway tonight for people in regards to specifically being able to shape that future of left social media or even the media?
Okay, first big thing, break habits. A lot of how we consume news, like a lot of content, is habit. So how a lot of people consume news, you get home, you switch the telly on. Since kids, we're conditioned to watch the news on the BBC, watch it on ITV. We're kind of programmed. Right? It's that time of the day, let's see what's happening on the news. These days we do it with the news channels. We need to break our own programming. We need to make some conscious choices, right? And technology's got a lot easier, right? So smart TVs now, they've got YouTube built in. You can add favorites on YouTube that are very easy to get to, 2 or 3 clicks to get to. This show, your show, Dan, other left media shows. It's very easy to get to now. Not as easy as it is to get to BBC News or Sky News, fair enough, but still quite easy. We just have to break that habit that, when you say, I need a news fix, what's going on? You break that habit. I'm not going to go to Sky News tonight, for instance. I'm going to go to this show, another left channel. We need to start doing that. We need to do it in terms of who we follow. One of the things I always find amazing is that a lot of folks on the left hate the Guardian. Brought Corbyn down. They stopped us. The Guardian is so. Next tweet, here's an article from the Guardian. Right? Here's me putting money in the Guardian's pocket. How is that? Right? Don't post stuff from the Guardian if you hate it.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't make sense, right? You can't say they trashed us. But here's an article. Go put money in their pockets. I rarely see lots of tweets from left people, particularly some of our bigger names, with links to left news outlets, to the Canary, to Tribune, to Novara, to Bywire, to Byline. How many times do you see a lot of those folks, BBC News, Guardian? Labour MPs, terrible for it. Good MPs, left MPs. John McDonnell is automatically programmed to tweet links to the Guardian.
Yeah.
And they're good articles, not having a go at John. John, like many people, is in habit. The Guardian have something good. Quick, I'll say this is really terrible. Look at this article. John, and like me, we need to get a habit of, the Guardian talking about this, that's good. Who else is doing it on left media? Let me boost them. Initially, it's hard work because you're breaking a habit. You will default 9 times out of 10 to what you used to do. But if you're conscious and you start doing it, you will start tweeting links to left media outlets. More people will see them. Those people will get more hits. They'll appear in more searches, on more timelines. Becomes a virtuous circle. Starts with us though, right? Break those habits of like how you consume video news, how you consume stuff on your timeline. I set up a list on my Twitter account of left news outlets. So it's really easy. You follow that list, news from all the left news outlets there. You don't have to do nothing else. See what you want there. Boost stuff from there. Don't boost the Guardian. Don't boost the BBC. Definitely don't boost the Telegraph or the Mail. We're in a very different place to a few years ago. Now we've got a small set, and admittedly it's small, set of left news outlets. Well, use them, right? We keep going, we need left media. Have one.
Yeah.
We have it now, today. It's small, It's embryonic, sure, but we have it today.
You're watching it.
Yeah. Use it, share it, boost it.
Definitely. I 100% agree with that. Like speaking to Nathan before, not sure if you caught it, but
yeah, I did.
We spoke about here in Merseyside, there's a publication that does not get publicated, and that's literally it. When you're online, I 100% agree with you. I probably have that habit a little bit still, but like definitely try. If you've seen something in whatever mainstream organization publication, then have a look and find it on an independent media website. Share it from there. Tag in the journalists, let people know who these journalists are. I definitely think that we need to have conversations with a lot of politicians and also a lot of commentators, I suppose those influencers that you spoke about bringing them onto the independent media. Obviously, if they want to slot on the Bywire, holler at your boy, Dano. But just like Dev did, you know what it is. But yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's a massive step people can take in regards to changing the media that people consume. Now, Dev, obviously we've run a little bit over today, but was there any final points you wanted to just cover before we do wrap up the show?
No, it's just that I think whoever you are, right, whether you got 10 followers, whether you hardly tweet, or you're someone with tens of thousands. Conscious choices. Make conscious choices that help boost and build our own media. Break habits. Initially, it'd be difficult. Like 8-9 times out of 10, you will default to the old choice, right? But have it conscious. Make those choices. We'll start building our own media. It will take time, but we need to start building those habits. All of us. The sooner we start doing that, the better.
Dev, we're definitely going to have a part 2 on, once we've got everyone sharing independent media news articles and, the mainstream is no longer mainstream. We're going to get you on to talk about part 2. What's next? How do we rock up the system 100%, my God? Don't get me excited. Anyway, listen, Dev, thank you so much for coming on tonight, man. Obviously, long-time brethren, long-time uncle of the movement. But keep it real, keep doing your thing, and make sure you keep watching on the Bywire. I will see you very soon, Dev. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Do you know what? Yeah, 2 heavyweights tonight. Nathan and Dev, they just broke it down. You get me? Obviously, apologies to those of you that wanted to catch the end of the football, but man, independent media, it is what it is. It's not often you're gonna get Dev, Nathan, and myself on a show together. Now, listen, guys, if you want more of this, if you want a lot more of this, well, obviously, I'm back at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Man's got the sauce, Dano. And on Thursday, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. on the Bywire News, Facebook and YouTube. Maybe we'll get a TV channel one day. I don't know. If there's anyone out there that wants to hit that donate button and chuck a few quid there, maybe we can do something. Obviously, that's me plugging the donate button. If you want to own the media, if you want to be a part of the media, if you want to run the media, then put your money where the media is, because that's where we're at, people. Hit the donate button. Big up all of the independent media partners that we featured today, and also that are featured on bywire.news. Definitely, check them out, and where you can, support them, follow them. Unfollow the big mainstream ones that are bussing down lies into your faces, and start following independent media journalists, investigative journalists, reporters, presenters, and the organizations. We've mentioned a few of them tonight: Declassified, Byline Times, Open Democracy, ourselves at Bywire, the Canary, the Bristol Cable, you got the Ferret, you've got the Rooftop. There's so many. Check out bywire.news. You'll find them all there. And obviously, big plug to the Independent Media Association. Check them out as well. They are doing a lot in regards to building that support around independent media and providing resources for them. Listen, guys, I'm going to let you guys go and catch the rest of your evenings. Thank you so much for joining me. Big up the guests, Nathan and Dev. Big up you guys for tuning in. This is on the Bywire. You know where the donate button is, and we will be back tomorrow with another big badass show. Keep it real, people.